What's up, guys? Welcome back to EJ's Press. I'm your host, EJ, and today we're going to be rambling on about superheroes. Specifically, why I write superheroes. Now, I mentioned this in the first video I ever posted. I write superhero novels. I absolutely love the superhero genre. Movies, comics, novels, anything superheroes or superhero related, I'll jump on it and at the very least give it a try. It's just always been something that's really appealed to me. And there's a number of reasons why. I think primarily there is a lot of childhood association with it, that a lot of people have, that a lot of guys especially grew up reading comic books. That's by no means to say girls didn't read comic books. Obviously, there are plenty who do, plenty who absolutely enjoy it, plenty who probably know more than I do. So don't take that as me saying only the guys like comics. And that's part of why I love them, because they are universal without trying to cater. They don't have to cater to everyone's needs. They don't have to follow this recent trend we've seen of very particular niche characters. We have to have a gay X-Man, like specifically one of the X-Men always has to be gay. We always have to have a Muslim character. We have to have a black character, a girl, something like that. Where we see this idea, especially from Marvel, but DC has kind of done a little bit with it with the Green Lanterns as well, where to varying degrees of success. I think DC does it better, where there's this impression, I think, from the publishing companies from comic book publishing companies, that readers won't read something unless it looks like them, which just isn't true. I loved Steel. When I was first introduced to him, John Henry Irons is his name, the African American who builds a big armored suit and a giant sledgehammer to go out and uphold Superman's legacy after he dies. I love that. I'm obviously not a 6'5", 270-pound black man named after a legend. But that's part of why we like superheroes, I think, is the legendary associations with them. Superman is he's a lot of things to a lot of people. Obviously, the two biggest ones we see, and I often see people say, well, he's not this, he's back and forth. We see comparisons to Moses, the baby set in a basket and sent away to be raised by another culture, and lead people to a better life, and Jesus. There's the messianic subtext there, and that makes sense. Moses is a messianic icon, a symbol for the true Messiah, but you see a lot of symbolism there. You see some Hercules symbolism as well. You see characters like Batman, who is very much the typical anti-hero, who's, yes, he dresses up as a bat, but at the end of the day, what really Batman's character boils down to is a man who sees and combats the darkness in the world from a position of turning that darkness against itself. And that's compelling whether you dress up in a bat costume or not. Superheroes are fantastic to me because they are modern day myths. They are the demigods of the modern age. From 1938 on, we haven't been so concerned with Tarzan, with Hercules, with Perseus, Theseus. We haven't been so concerned with King Arthur or Aragorn even. We've focused really a lot more into these superheroes because they are humans magnified. They take human traits and human struggles and basic human problems and just blow them up into these grand adventures, these huge tales of excitement and action and power and good and evil, and the building blocks of good narrative can be found very easily in superhero stories. And I love that. I love the good and evil dichotomy. I love the noble hero and the dastardly villain. I love these characters who earn our respect by the quality of their character, not just the things they can do. And yes, they can do amazing things, but it's not, being a superhero isn't just what you can do. It's who you are. And that's what I love about them. It's why I'm not a fan of unheroes. It's why I'm not a fan of a lot of these new superheroes that are coming out, that their redeeming quality, their worthy quality, what makes them a good choice to be a superhero is not something they are in terms of character. It's not their nobility, their selflessness, their devotion to good. It's the color of their skin. It's their sexuality. It's their name, basically. It's something that they have that is part of their character, but it's allowed to become a driving force in their character, when really we should be more concerned with why they're fighting the good fight. Specifically, they have to fight the good fight. That's one of the things that a superhero has to do, but we have to be more concerned with what kind of person fights the good fight. What kind of person do we want to emulate? Who are we modeling for the people reading comic books, and watching superhero movies and reading superhero novels, which is young people. And they are a very powerful tool. We've had, essentially, humanity, like I said, has had superheroes for millennia with the Greek demigods, with the Greek heroes, Jason and the Argonauts, the Odyssey, Perseus, Theseus, these great heroes. They were flawed, absolutely. They weren't great people, but they went out and they did great and amazing things. Now, Hercules, I would say, less of a great guy. Hercules leaned more towards the god side, and the Greek gods were humans at their worst. Almost all powerful humans at their absolute worst, just a bunch of lazy, spoiled children. And that's a different story. That's the superheroes were starting to veer towards, and that worries me. But I like to write superheroes because they're those great stories. They are the traditional, they are the classic stories, the foundational socialization tools for humanity. We tell each other stories. It's this thing called narrative theory, where human identity, family identity, cultural identity is wrapped up in the stories we tell ourselves, and the way we tell those stories, and the consistency with which we tell those stories, and the way, that everybody ties in, and the recognizable characters and aspects of those stories that we know can be counted on to behave in a certain way. Those are how we socialize ourselves according to this narrative theory. And I love that idea as a writer. I mean, it glorifies storytellers, so why wouldn't I? But it's this idea that the stories we tell have power beyond just igniting the imagination. And they do ignite the imagination. They set the mind on fire. Imagining a man flying, like, that's something crazy to me. That's something that I don't ever want to become mundane. Like, oh, there goes Tim, he's late to work, you can tell. I don't want to see a guy shooting fire out of his hands and say, hey, what's up, Dave? I don't want to walk past a gal who's just carrying her car on her shoulder and say, hey, Gloria, how you doing? How's the kid? I want that to be incredible, and superheroes make that incredible. It's why stories where there's just all the like everyone's a hero and there's no normals always feel a little weird to me, because it's like, that's, if everybody's special, then who is really special? But they're special people. They're characters who draw your attention, and so the question becomes then, what makes them worthy of our attention? Because obviously, somebody could be very powerful and not worthy of our attention. He might merit our attention. Adolf Hitler certainly merited attention. But it wasn't a worthiness aspect. It was, somebody's got to stop this guy. And that's where villains come in. I love superhero villains. I love characters like Lex Luthor, like Bane, like Magneto. Characters who have these, very dark personalities, these very obviously evil characters who can still have redeeming qualities. They're human characters. They're very, there's good and evil. And you always know who the good guys are and you always know who the bad guys are in superheroes, but they're not one-dimensional. They're not always good, always makes the right decision, never fails, never experiences doubt, and they're not always evil, always doing something bad, never has a motivation beyond I just want to be bad. That's not the case in good superhero fiction. Good superhero fiction tells stories of humans elevated above normal human positions, and using that to tell these human stories. Look at Spider-Man as a fantastic example of this. This is a guy who is down on his luck, can't make it with the ladies, socially awkward, can't hold down a good job, has to worry about paying for his aunt's medical bills as well as his own, has to worry about getting through school. He's got to worry about his grades if he wants a future. And on top of that, he's got the tremendous responsibility of being Spider-Man. He's got the power, and he's a noble character who is raised well by a good man to believe and understand that having power beyond a normal person gives you responsibility beyond a normal person. And then you look at the flip side of Norman Osborn or Dr. Octavius. Dr. Octavius is more sympathetic because he was created by an accident and it drove him mad. But Norman Osborn is this calculating, cold, heartless man whose great power has left him callous to the world, whose great ambition is to, it changes from book to book, but essentially just to destroy Spider-Man at this point, not because he's evil, but because Spider-Man has thwarted his plans so many times. It started out as a game for him. Way back in the first year of Spider-Man, Green Goblin shows up. He's basically just there to screw with Spider-Man. He's just there to mess with him because Norman Osborn is so rich and he got bored. He got bored of being so powerful and rich, and so he went out and did a bad thing. And it's this great dichotomy of the responsibility of power and the danger of power. Those types of ideas, those types of equations, all set on the backdrop of a normal high school kid who suddenly has spider powers, really set it off. It's something that bugged me a little bit about the advertising for Spider-Verse, which was a great movie, by the way. Fantastic film. Definitely one of the better movies of 2018. But the tagline, the advertising tagline was, what makes you different makes you Spider-Man. And I don't think that's the case. I think if what makes you different makes you Spider-Man, then everybody's Spider-Man, and Spider-Man means nothing. It's just like being human. Yes, that has some intrinsic value to it, but it doesn't make you different from any other human. That's not what actually makes you stand out. There's a specific difference, and it's a difference of character. It is strength of character. It's not the color of your skin. It's not the presence or absence of a Y chromosome. It's not your religious beliefs. It is, one, the spider powers. Those are kind of important to be Spider-Man. I couldn't show up with Tyrannosaurus Rex powers and say, hey, I'm different, I'm Spider-Man. And two, it's that character. It's the strength of character that wants to be good, that wants to excel as a human being beyond just, I want to succeed. It's, I want to succeed, but I'm not going to sacrifice my morals to get there. It's, I want to be the best possible person I can, and doing that means sacrificing my own happiness sometimes, often sacrificing my own stability, my own health, my own well-being, my safety, because being the best person I can be means using the spider powers I've been given to act in the interests of others. And that's what's fascinating to me about superheroes, and that's what I think is missing from a lot of fiction in the modern day, where you have all these grim and gritty anti-heroes and these cruddy and grimy unheroes that don't sacrifice, really, that don't have to be noble to be heroes anymore. That's something I think we've lost, and something I think can be best rediscovered with superheroes. And that's why I love to write them. because it gives me a chance to sit and think, what would the best possible version of me, or the best possible version of anyone, of my father, of my granddad. They are both huge inspirations for my characters, because I can sit back and think, what would my ideal dad do in this situation? Because I know what he's like, and I know how to take, like, in my mind, I have this idea of, this is the great things that he's capable of doing. What would my ideal self do in this situation? What would my ideal father do? What would my ideal brother do? What would my cousin do? What would my aunt do? That sort of thing, where I can take it and ratchet it up to what is the greatest thing they could do. And then I can turn around and look at the villain and say, what is the most scheming, evil thing my villain can do? And it's why I usually have kind of tried to avoid just straight world domination. Taking over the world governments is a lot more work than it's worth. And it's why I look at taking real world evil, taking real scummy things, beyond just the government's not using my taxes the way I want them to, and or beyond, this person doesn't think that something I do in my life is a good thing, or this person likes to make fun of me for this, that, or the other thing. Going beyond that and looking at real, like, dark evil, and being able to portray that and personify that is just a fun exercise, because it means I get to think about what's right and wrong, and it means that right and wrong has to exist. Because if right and wrong didn't exist, then I wouldn't really be able to conceptualize what an ideal would be, what an anti-ideal would be. If right and wrong didn't exist, I don't think we'd have any need for superheroes. So they're kind of life-affirming in that way as well, because it confirms my belief that there is good in this world and there is evil. Shades of gray are really just cross-hatching. You might say, well, there's some things that are better and some things that are worse. Sure, I get that. It's better to, on a scale of buying a homeless man dinner and kicking a homeless man, walking past him is certainly better than kicking and worse than buying him dinner. But that's just inaction. That's not a shade of anything, because that's choosing not to do something. And Churchill put it best, all it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to stand by and do nothing. So even that is just, that's back to evil. It's a tremendous weight to have to look at the world and say, all right, we're going to find the absolute best, and we're going to write about that. We're also going to write about the absolute worst. But it's very instructive. It's very important to have these narratives that guide us and show us, this is what's acceptable. This is how you behave as a person. This is the thing to aspire to, and this is the thing to shun. This is the thing to avoid. No matter what your situation in life, whether you're a billionaire tech magnate like Tony Stark, or a broke high school kid like Peter Parker, you aspire to these goals, you reject these ideals, and you stand for what's right no matter what it costs. And that's why I love superheroes. That's why I write superheroes, because I get to show the world right and wrong. I get to demonstrate what good and evil are, and I get to do it in these fantastic adventures, these over-the-top, larger-than-life adventures, beyond something that a mundane, normal character could do. But what do I know? I'm just rambling on. Did you enjoy listening to me ramble on? Well, go ahead and like the video and subscribe for more. Thanks.